and Newsday columnist Ellis Henican. I'm John Scott. Fox News Watch is on right now.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the least suspenseful announcement of all time. As almost all of you have reported, my Chief of Staff, Rahm Emanuel, has informed me that he will be leaving his post today to explore other opportunities.
So off he goes. Rahm Emanuel, the man who has run the Obama White House from the start, bailing from his Chief of Staff role, headed for Chicago and a run for mayor of that city. So it was the worst kept secret in Washington. The president alluded to it there. It is secret no more. Rahm Emanuel is out. Give us a history lesson of how he treated the press.
Well, he had a fascinating relationship with the press. He used the press, he fought with the press, he debated with the press, and he used a lot of really vulgar words with the press. And we are always suckers for that. It makes it feels like we're being brought into the inner circle. The guy trusts us a little bit. And so I would say, on balance, he was an effective manipulator of the press. The
conversation that the president had with Roliing Stone magazine, he said some rather amazing things. Talked about the war in Afghanistan, the Tea Party, financial reform, the newfound appreciation he has for rapper Lil Wayne. One topic, though, is getting all the coverage. Fox News. Here is his quote. He says, "The golden age of an objective press was a pretty narrow span of time in our history. Before that, you had folks like Hearst, who used their newspapers very intentionally to promote their viewpoints. I think Fox is part of that tradition. It is part of the tradition that has a very clear, undeniable point of view. It's a point of view that I disagree with. It's a point of view that I think is ultimately destructive for the long-term growth of a country that has a vibrant middle class and is competitive in the world." Now, Fox didn't respond to that, but
I will. I will.
Okay, go ahead.
I will say that I'm not aware of an American president in history saying that a significant chunk of the population of the country is destructive. That's just not the way presidents who took an oath to defend the entire nation and so on are supposed to talk. But on top of that, I will say this golden age of journalism, which begins about when the Columbia Journalism School began at the turn of the century and so on, it sort of lasted sort of into the 90s or maybe or so far, includes such figures in the golden age as Walter Duranty, the New York Times reporter who went to Soviet Russia and said there's no famine here, Stalin's not killing anybody. They gave him a Pulitzer Prize, which the New York Times 70 years later has never returned. It also includes people like Daniel Schorr, who went to Germany and said that Goldwater is going to be a Nazi in the 1964 campaign. That's the golden age that Obama's talking about.
See, Judy, we never forget. We never forget.
As a Columbia graduate, let me say I'm not totally proud of every single member, but listen, there's something to what he's saying. I mean, there is far more frank point of view in television news today than there has ever been. We can find examples in the past.
But is it just sour grapes?
Well, no, and I don't think, by the way, there's anything wrong with thinking that people who have differing views from your own, and all of us have strong views, that there sometimes is something destructive about other people's political views. Isn't that just part of feeling passionate?
But the idea that any cable channel, even one as hugely influential as Fox News, is destructive of the middle class is absurd. Now, I think this is pretty simple what's going on here. Liberals hate Fox News. Barack Obama is a liberal. Obama hates Fox. It adds, the equation's very easy. But let me say, he pretends as though he's above the cable chatter and the back and forth. He's obviously consumed by it, and now is very much a part of it himself.
Right. But as a passionate political person, Rich, and the others at the table, we all have views that we disagree with, that we think harm our country. Isn't that
but you're not the
perfectly
President of the United States going around.
But you know what? It'll do nothing but
outlets.
drive up Fox ratings. So bring it on, because anybody who wants a skeptical point of view may be turning that dial to Fox. It didn't work the first time the White House launched an attack on Fox, and it's not going to work this time.
When you have the deputy press secretary of the White House saying, now, of course, we don't like Fox, but let's now praise, pat him on the head, Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow.
Right.
Then, I mean, again, if you want a different point of view than the White House, obviously you can't go to MSNBC because you'll get the same thing they're saying. You go somewhere else.
They should be, rightly should be insulted by that. You think Olbermann and Maddow should be insulted by getting patted on the head by the President of the United States, the kind of people who pride themselves supposedly on speaking truth to power.
Well, for our viewers who didn't see the quote, let me read it for you here. If you're on the left, if you're somebody like Keith Olbermann or Rachel Maddow, one of the folks who helps keep our government honest and pushes and prods to make sure that folks are true to progressive values, then the president thinks that those folks provide an invaluable service. So, Rachel Maddow and Keith Olbermann, we salute you for providing this invaluable service. Well, I don't know what Fox is doing.
Well, but why is there anything wrong with the president saying, hey, I like people who like me? I mean, don't all presidents like people
now
who like
providing an invaluable service to the country.
I will agree with you to this extent, though. It does make me very nervous, the rare occasions when politicians have praised me. That kind of gives me the willies, too. I
Yes,
agree with
as
you
well
about that.
as well it should.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't like you, you're doing something
Much
right.
better off that way.
But all right, let's start with this Wall Street Journal NBC News poll asking Republicans if they identify with the Tea Party movement. 71% said yes. Would you
Obviously,
say,
a
Ellis,
pretty big majority
that the
there.
media try to drive a wedge between the Tea Party movement on the one hand and the Republican Party on the other?
Well, I mean, I think there is a wedge there, and I think it ought to be reported. In fact, up until now, the most severe electoral victims of the Tea Party passion have been fellow Republicans in these primaries. What we don't know, John, is the question that's so important in November, which is that power broad enough and deep enough to actually affect general elections? And we're going to find that out. But so far, it's mostly been an inner Republican
But I
fight.
think the O'Donnell victory gave Brian Williams, to name one, a license to say, look, this is just now, and Palladino here in New York, this is now a season of anger. I think that's their template now for the month of October is, obviously there's this angry Republican. Why could anybody be mad at Obama? But these people are, and let's go study them under a microscope.
Do the media understand that voter anger?
Well, never enough, and we're always slow to the story. I mean, I agree with Judy on that. But, you know, it's a legitimate conversation to be having. I mean, what is the soul of the Republican Party today? And I don't think we know the answer to that yet.
This anger meme, it's so predictable. It's exactly what we saw in 1994 when there was a Republican rout. It's what we're seeing now in anticipation of another Republican rout. And you never heard in 2008, oh, people are angry with George W. Bush, and that's a terrible, frightening thing. It just never works that way.
Right. And John Kerry didn't say the voters of 06 and 08 were, quote, misinformed. They're the same voters this time around, but back then, now they're misinformed. Back then they were just simply good.
2 years they've gotten dumber.
Judy, in that Rolling Stone article, the president said about the Tea Party that their anger is misdirected. He went on to say, there are probably some aspects of the Tea Party that are a little darker, that have to do with anti-immigrant sentiment, or are troubled by what I represent as the president. I mean, it sounds like he's reading or mimicking your old employer, the New York Times.
Well, or Jimmy Carter, who basically said that this was a party of racists and bigots, a statement, an assertion for which no evidence was presented that was picked up by the media. I think the president was...
There's counter-evidence. Specifically, Obama won the election in 2008. I mean, if they were racist now, why weren't they racist 2 years ago and they voted for him?
So is the president well served, I guess, by going out in the media, Rich, and casting aspersions on what did he call it, the darker aspects of the Tea Party movement?
Absolutely not. I mean, that's self-pitying, it's wrong, it's paranoid, and it's unhelpful. I mean, if he were smarter in his treatment of this, he would take a cue from Bill Clinton, who talks of the Tea Party in a respectful way and says, I understand why they're upset.
I feel your pain.
Yeah, and then wants to go about different ways of addressing it. But for the President of the United States to say people hate him because he's an African American, which is basically what he's saying at the end of the statement, is an extraordinary thing and a slander.
Oh, well, listen, Clinton is a master at it, and that's a pretty high bar for any politician to reach. But one thing everyone in politics needs, and that's enemies. And, you know, in the same way that Sarah Palin has gotten mileage with her base by saying how picked on she is by the media, you know, once in a while you're going to get Barack Obama saying, hey, some of these extremists out here don't like me for bad reasons.